Was it Gen Z telling people, or was it telling the establishment to stay out? Because I remember us telling the late Honorable Raila Odinga, stay out of this.
But
We know the
actually,
handshake.
let's.
We know the handshake.
but it wasn't only Raila,
whatever.
it was Boniface Mwangi, it was a lot of these human rights people in the human rights
You know,
organization.
when we start pointing fingers, who caused this ones,
Right.
this, there's a difference where that happens, whereby, like, when they said we are coming out, you don't want to be leaderless, to be tribeless, it was like I talked to the older generation of you guys being away. You guys continue staying away because we do not want interruptions in what's coming in. So that's what caused that separation to come in. It was more of the Gen Zs pushing out the older crowd.
The 2026 annual conference of the Kenya Nurses Association of America, KNAA, is happening in Baltimore from September 17th through the 19th at the Sheraton Baltimore North Hotel in Towson, Maryland. Early registration is now open at $250 until July 1st. After that, it goes up to $300. Vendor and sponsorship opportunities are also available, but space is limited. Registration details are on your screen, and the links are pinned in the comments and description below. For inquiries, call 848-224-1201 or email info@kenyannursesUSA.org. That's info@kenyannursesUSA.org. Let me slowly interject, Joy. Like the sectarianism that you're talking about, which is something that I've not thought about. Like when the movement started, wasn't it more of also Gen Z telling people who are not Gen Zs, you guys stay out of this? Because I remember, like in Boniface Mwangi being told to stay out of this. And a lot of the other people who maybe had some experience in protesting were being told, like, keep away from this. So where was that sectarianism? Was it coming from the outside, or was it coming from within Gen Z telling the other crowd, you guys stay out, this is our fight?
Was it Gen Z telling people, or was it telling the establishment to stay out? Because I remember us telling the late Honorable Raila Odinga, stay out of this. We know the handshake. We know the handshake.
But it wasn't only Raila, it was Boniface Mwangi, it was a lot of these human rights people in the human rights organization. The gentleman who was here, Irungu Houghton, they were being actively told to stay away from the movement. Let me hear.
And at the end of the day, sectarianism, you're working for your enemies once you start being sectarian. Because once you start making those lines, once you start creating points of division in your society, those are the points of manipulation that forces you to separate people from each other, essentially. It's honestly, you can think of it as new age tribalism, as we're fizzling out of tribalism. I mean, I would like to hope, Joy, but these things just reform themselves. They become new ways of separating people from one another.
Let's give Mika a chance to say something. Mika.
Now, Joy, how you've just spoken is the exact way that actually the term Gen Z protest came out to be, because it came out in a way whereby they were like, you guys are the ones who put us in the mess, get the hell out of here, we don't want to deal with you, and boom, they are the ones who caused that separation. But when we start pointing fingers, who caused these ones, this, there's a difference where that happens, whereby, like, when they said we are coming out, you don't want to be leaderless, to be tribeless, it was like I talked to the older generation of you guys being away. You guys continue staying away because we do not want interruptions in what's coming in. So that's what caused that separation to come in. It was more of the Gen Zs pushing out the older crowd. Now, I want to go back to something that I've forgotten the gentleman's name was talking about.
Luca.
And that was political education. In Kenya, we call it civic education. And let me tell you a reality about Kenya. You can do all the civic educations that you want to do, but we have a poverty of morality in Kenya, which is caused by the living situation, aka poverty.
Absolutely.
Right? So before you address that, like, what you will go to, like, you see, like, during these protests, when this protest came out first, the first time this protest came out, it was considered a protest of what? Rich kids, right? because they used to say those kids watotoa KFC na bag and wamekuja kuprotest leo.
Okay, but who said that? A
Right?
politician
Hold up.
said that.
Let me finish. Yeah, politicians say that, but it was what was being said outside because that was said before that was said. It was what people are saying. Now, if you realize the day that Kina Rex were killed, that is the day that youth from the whole of Nairobi came out. It wasn't just a protest that was of people who were on Twitter or anything. It was a protest of everybody who was in Nairobi that came up, right? And I think that was the one for the June 25th. Not the first.
Yeah.
There were like three protests. The first one, the second one, the celebrities went, and then the third one that was now the major one that people went up to parliament. Now, if that was because now the youth who actually vote, wale wa ghetto, the youth who actually go to Bunge la Mwananchi, the youth who politicians go to bribe, steal, and everything, those were the ones who came out to protest with the other ones. Like, it was now a whole unified protest. Now, this is where, when we come and say that, when we are planning, we are saying we're planning to make things out. After all this anger, after all these protests, right? Every movement that was formed somehow went and started following different ways. Nobody bothered to sit down and talk to these kids and try to get them to be registered voters. Remember, most of them even didn't have IDs. They were just in the form that they're done with school, they're sitting, they're relaxing, they're waiting for their parents to do whatever they're doing, they're waiting for them. They were just sitting up. So it's up to now this older generation, them, you need to go get an ID, you need to go register as a voter, so that you can influence party politics, you can learn about things. Now, these are the things that we are saying right now. When we look at it, we're not saying it's a failure. Trust me, that was not a failure. That protest has made the government start talking to people more. It has made the government stay on shows. Opulence has reduced. People are not flashing. MPs were doing challenges like scammers, throwing money all over, showing each other. Those have ended. Like, there's a more. You feel like there's a little bit more accountability into the country. So it was never a failure. Probably the failure that we can say is the build-up from that,
After.
right? Right now, I speak to a lot of young people in the country. Like, I'm so involved with so many young people in the country. And the thing is, the talk I usually tell them is simple. And when we speak to them and they ask us, like, okay, fine, even if I register as a voter, what do I do next? Is that teaching them, register to these parties, infiltrate the parties, clean the parties out, work with everything? What they want right now is their belief is that there's going to be a saint of a candidate who's going to come and replace the evil that they know right now. The thing is, they have to be taught. As you said, it takes time and it takes process. That is the lesson that needs to be taught into them, in that you have to do this dirty work yourself. There's never going to be a special candidate coming out from nowhere and replace this guy.
I agree.
So that is where I would say what you are saying and what Ali are saying, if you marry them together, there is a way on how this can be successful. But right now, we cannot say that if we go for elections right now, there will be an impact, but it's not going to be that impact that most people are expecting.
Now, so just so that we do not, like, belabor this point too much, let me read a comment here that's coming from J Moogs on YouTube. J Moogs says, I just came to say none of you is even willing to consider that this was a CIA operation. In hindsight, after an analysis of color revolutions as well as more evidence come out about the protests in Tanzania, it has become increasingly obvious that this was a CIA op. The opposition to Ruto is mostly Kikuyu, have been I can't see that word, have been left out in the cold, and a lot of the noise is the rich Kikuyu class making noise about corruption. This is part of the cause. This doesn't take away from the fact that this was a CIA op. FYI, there was an economic hitman in town at the moment. And of course, this is Jay Moog's opinion. It's
Yeah,
his
I'd love
point
to
of view.
respond.
It's his point of view, you know, like and I've heard this, you know, like said somewhere else. So 1 minute response, and then we're gonna move on
And
from
this is
point.
why we talk about. First of all, I agree. If any movement or organization has to be improving the material conditions of the people it hopes to convince, and that is definitely part of the work alongside political education. But this is why the political education is so important. We talk about color revolutions all the time because you have to understand the broader picture of what's going on and why. When you understand why what is happening in Kenya is happening in Nepal and Tanzania and other countries, we start to understand the task that needs to be the task ahead of us. People are looking to this generation. It sounds even loaded in these questions, an expectation for what is next. The Gen Z has to have a conversation about what that is. It has, and that conversation is informed by an interrogation of how we got here, of our history thus far. Why is this? Why am I certain that this was not a color revolution? First of all, because there's no country in sub-Saharan Africa that is more prostrate to American interests than Kenya is. Kenya, especially under President Ruto, it is completely subservient to America's interests. Kenya was the first country in sub-Saharan Africa to attain non-NATO status, non-NATO ally status, a security agreement with America. Remember, this finance bill itself was born of IMF or austerity measures. It was IMF that asked Kenya to realize $2.7 billion worth of revenue, so that they could get a little over $1 billion worth of loans from IMF. And the revenue measures that they induced were things that were destructive to the cost of living of Kenyans. That's how this IMF bill, this treasure, you might as well call it an IMF bill. That's how this finance bill came to be in the first place, because they were completely subservient to American interests. But look at what happened, just as we are talking about what Gen Z accomplished or didn't accomplish. That the year after that, they had already received $600 million of that 1.1 billion that are promised for these austerity measures. They had to attain that level of revenue in 2024 and 2025 towards 2026, and they would get the final disbursement. The finance bill of 2025 looked dramatically different from what was produced in 2024. What they produced was less than a couple $100 million worth of revenue inducers, and it was not the cost of living measures, not taxes on oil and sanitary pads and all these other things that you saw them trying to tax to get that fast inducement. And you know what? The second half of that 1.1 billion that they would have gotten from the IMF, Kenya never received. That's why the political class is furious, because we pushed them back so severely that the IMF had to regroup and reconsider. And now, as they're talking about new sets of loans, even if it is a cosmetic measure, they're saying anti-corruption measures, social impact, things that benefit the working people have to be part of the package. You can't just go tax the living hell out of working people and say that you're inducing tax revenue. They're changing their approach to how they do this. It's not a clean victory, but it absolutely had an impact. So to say this is happening at the protest is happening at Americans' bequest is completely wrong. It happened against American interests in Kenya.
Okay, now